Why can't I get the five sensory in my life to validate me as a sixth sensory? Hi, my name is Leah Chantel, and today I'm talking about why it's darn near impossible for five sensories to get us as six sensories. So I'll give you an example of a story that came up earlier this week. There's this gentleman that had fallen down in my building, and immediately, as a sixth sensory, my sense of empathy lights up and I want to help. But I can't physically lift him up off the floor, so I'm looking for solutions. There are people around me, and I wasn't sure how long this gentleman had been on the floor, but one gentleman was waiting at the elevator, and I asked for his help. He literally didn't say anything. He turned the other way, hopped into the elevator, and went up. There was another gentleman who'd been sitting there even longer, who was a salesperson for a company, and I won't mention the company's name, but he had just been sitting there and not doing anything to help this old gentleman, except he said, oh, he should have called an ambulance. But this older gentleman didn't want to call an ambulance because he wasn't hurt. He just needed some help getting up off the floor. So I went to another lady, and she also said, no, can't help. But it kind of made sense because she was kind of older and looking a little fragile herself, so maybe she wasn't able to. But I asked, what should I do? What's the right thing to do? And thankfully, she had the wherewithal to say, call the superintendent. So I called the superintendent and tried to ask him for help with this older gentleman, and he also says the same thing. He needs to call an ambulance. And so I'm trying to think of a solution, and I'm talking to the gentleman, and I said, do you think a chair would help you? But it took me a while to get to this answer. I'd gone to several people for help, and nobody wanted to help. And finally, he said yes, and I went and got a chair from my place and brought it down to him so he was able to stand up and go on about his day. But my point as a sixth sensories, you might think, well, what's the point of this story? Well, the point is most of us are five sensories, and we'll turn the other way when somebody needs help rather than try to help. If you're the type of person who stops and wants to help, then you're a sixth sensory. You have a sense of empathy, and that can manifest in many different ways in different people. For some people, that might mean that they're a medium and they talk to the dead. For others, maybe they're an intuitive and they give really wise guidance to others. Other people might be a spiritual leader in their community, or they could even be a leader in their religion. Religion is kind of a mixed bag. There are some empathic types drawn to religion, but there are also some very power-hungry, left-brain, five-sensory types drawn to religion. So it's kind of a mix. Anyway, when you're a sixth sensory and you want to help, your identity is different by default in a very different way from a five sensory who doesn't want to help. And so when you go to a five sensory hoping to receive love, hoping to receive validation of some kind for your identity and who you are as a sixth sensory, what do you think is going to happen? Well, when you come to them for that validation, they have to self-reflect. And they don't like reflecting. What they'll realize is they're not the type of person who wants to help. And they don't really want to look at that. And so, therefore, they're more likely to get bored when they're listening to you talk, or they may get very triggered and very defensive if they're not shutting down automatically. Or they may simply just believe that you're a freak and they don't want to talk to you anymore when you come to them with a deep conversation. And if you've ever had this happen, where you've tried to talk to someone and you weren't received, this is why. And so you might say, well, Leah, how do I get these people to connect with me? How do I get them to get me? And the true answer is you really can't. That kind of connection only happens when you find other empathic people or other sixth sensories in a community or in a group. And that's why I started releasing these videos online and trying to find these communities of us empathic people, because together we're able to help in this world, but we need each other. We need to validate each other and support each other. And if we don't do that, then we're going to feel lost in a world of five sensory people who don't really care. So that's number one, is you have to go to the right person for validation. If you're going to people you're close to in your day-to-day life, but they're not sixth sensory and they don't really have a deep sense of empathy, and this is a huge majority of people, I would say, in most people's lives, you're probably not going to get that validation. You're probably actually going to get a negative response. And so my answer to that is don't talk to them about these deeper issues or these deeper questions that you're feeling inside of your heart. They're not the right people to go to. However, now here gets to be the second part of the equation, which is a little bit more fun. You can deepen your relationship with them, and they can get you in a certain way, but it's not directly through conversation. The way to get five sensories to get you as a sixth sensory is to create fun experiences that you can both enjoy together. Now, I'm not saying be irresponsible, blow money you don't have on a vacation, or go out drinking or hooking up, or overly shopping. Like, these are not real fun. So sometimes people call this fun, but it's not really fun activities. These are more self-destructive, checking out activities. When I'm talking about genuine fun, I'm talking about going to a park and enjoying nature. Or maybe you go to a bookstore together, or you set up a fun movie night at home, or you go out to the movies together and you watch something very uplifting, or you go to a flower shop or a museum. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to force them into your interests if they're not interested in the same thing as you. Even a hockey game or a sports game of some sort, like basketball, could be a productive, fun activity. These are the best ways for five sensories and six sensories to connect and build a relationship. That's why in business, so many businesses plan these activities that seem kind of lavish, but businesses know that when they connect and they're having a good time, that's when they're probably going to form a good relationship. Well, in some countries and governments, this is not allowed. It depends on the context. But when it's a business-to-business context and they're allowed to kind of have free reign and do what they want, they tend to have fun together. Because fun is a very powerful force that brings people together, and you don't necessarily have to blow a lot of money to have fun. It brings people from very different backgrounds and very different belief systems together. And by the way, as a sixth sensory, we've usually thrown fun to the wayside. We're usually too busy being responsible for our lives, doing the things like working or cleaning up around the house, taking care of kids if we have kids, or following up with our elderly family members, whatever that is. Usually sixth sensory people are overly responsible because we're very empathic. And so we pick up on those responsibilities first. But what we actually need to do is spin those priorities back around and put fun right back up at the top. That's how we're going to stay in balance with ourselves individually, and how we're going to stay in balance with our five sensory counterparts in our families and in our workplaces and in our friends. When we can keep these priorities in balance and have good relationships by prioritizing fun, that's when we're going to feel the most witnessed, even though we haven't had those direct, deep conversations with them. Now, where you can go to those people who will understand you in deep conversation will be your soul family or soul groups. You may find them online through Facebook or through YouTube in communities like this, or maybe you're very lucky and there's a circle in your community that you can join of people who are very empathic and have the same interests that you do. Wherever you find those people, they are your treasure, because they can actually witness you deeply in a way that your five sensory counterparts cannot. And you have to have the wisdom to discern and know the difference between somebody who can receive you deeply and someone who doesn't receive you deeply. Often, sixth sensories who are a little bit darker or haven't fully awakened can be a little bit needy and go to almost anybody they have rapport with to be witnessed and validated, and not understand that that person is not capable of witnessing or validating them. And then when they don't get seen, they feel disempowered. They feel sad that somebody doesn't recognize who they are. And that's how a lot of us end up wounded with low self-esteem when we're empaths. And we cannot afford to be shut down like that and walking around society like that, because if we're not empowered and we're not doing our work in society, more and more five sensory people are going to make decisions on our behalf that's going to encourage more apathy, less help, less empathy. And so us as six sensories, we've got to come together as a community, witness each other, build each other up, and find ways to contribute to the greater whole that's really going to help the planet and help society. And we can still keep in touch with our five sensory counterparts, but just understand that we're going to connect by having fun. And that's good for us. That's very nurturing for us as six sensories anyway. And so we should be prioritizing that.